This package of
Great to be with
relief
you,
for
Andrew.
Victoria, or this package for Victoria, or for lockdowns going forward, did the government change its mind on it for political reasons?
I think that, our heart goes out to the people of Victoria. I know that my family is down in lockdown at the moment. The kids are homeschooling, that businesses around us have shut down yet again. This is our fourth lockdown in Victoria, over 140 days in lockdown in the last 18 months. And, Victorians have really done it tough. I think that the decision that was made by the Prime Minister and the Treasurer really reflects not just the sympathy for Victorians, but understanding that they need our help, that the Morrison government stands alongside Victorians when they need it the most. And that's why the decision was made.
Do you personally think the lockdown needed to be extended past the initial 7 days? There seems to be a vastly different approach between the way Victoria and New South Wales handles these outbreaks.
Well, I think that each state responds to the health advice that they have and the capabilities that they have to manage the outbreak. Victoria has responded to the medical advice that Brett Sutton and others have given the state government there. And they've decided that the lockdown does need to be extended in order for them to catch up, to have a circuit breaker, make sure that their contact tracking and tracing works, and that they can determine the origins of each one of the cases that they have. The good news is, of course, is that the case numbers are coming down. I think that's a really positive sign.
Tell me about the mood of Victorians, because there was an interesting piece in the Weekend Australian magazine last week by Cameron Stewart, where he said that if you go to a dinner party in Melbourne at the moment, half of the people are really pro Dan Andrews and half of the people are really off him. There's no sort of sitting on the fence for Victorians at the moment. It's really divided the community, was the picture he was painting.
Yeah, look, I have to admit that I've experienced that myself, that there is some serious division of opinion in Victoria as to how the lockdowns have been handled, how COVID's been handled more broadly. All you need to do is go to the Melbourne CBD and you can see the effects that these long lockdowns have had. Businesses have shut down. There are strip shops that are, almost tumbleweeds go down there. Children that have been left out of school for way too long are really struggling to catch up in 2021. So you can understand why there's that almost visceral reaction to the news that there's yet another lockdown or an extension of a lockdown. Look, the good news is kids are going back to school. I think that's really important, that they can have that continuity in their education, because last year really was very damaging for so many people.
Oh, certainly. Look, I wanted to ask you about this Your Super, Your Future bill. It hasn't been without its bumps along the road, I suppose. It's been reported that after opposition from Barnaby Joyce, this provision which allows you to interfere, I guess, in what super funds invest with, perhaps prevent them from investing things like the new daily, was dropped. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's probably important to put this into context, Andrew. The Your Super, Your Future legislation is just the next step in the Morrison government's arc of superannuation reforms, which has largely been about improving the efficiency of the system, getting rid of the duplicate accounts, getting rid of that long tail of underperforming funds, lowering fees and making sure that insurance premiums are appropriately applied. So part of that new level of transparency and accountability includes a better articulation of their best interest duty. Super funds have to act in the best interest of their members. So we've changed that to better articulate that definition to being best financial interest. And the regulation that's been removed now and amended out of the bill was largely to strengthen that best financial interest responsibility of super funds, just to strengthen that a little bit more and have that that lever of last resort.
Was it Barnaby Joyce's intervention, though, and the clear feeling you didn't have the numbers with Craig Kelly on the House of Representatives floor that made you pull that out?
Well, I find this really strange. I'm a senator, so we amend bills all the time. This isn't really unusual for us. But what we have done is listened, most importantly to the crossbench, who did have some concerns about that ministerial intervention power, which was simply there as a last resort measure, a reserve power, if the regulator needed it, in order to ensure that super funds were acting in the best financial interest of members. Now, look, the good news is, even if we have removed that amendment, removed that provision, that power, it doesn't actually change the intent of the bill or the outcome of the bill. The Your Future, Your Super legislation will still save members around $17.9 billion in their superannuation savings over the next decade.
Where does the 17.9 billion, I've heard the Treasurer use it before, where does that come from? How's that calculated?
Well, actually, there's 4 components of this bill, and each one of the components contributes to that 17.9 billion. I'm afraid I don't have the numbers in front of me as to what each component is worth. But simply by not having duplicate accounts, for instance, you've actually saved yourself multiple sets of fees, multiple sets of insurance premiums. So you can see how the savings flow to members by stamping out the ability for new employers to simply give you a brand new superannuation fund every time you start a new job.
What do you think about what's going to happen if we keep moving to this 12% compulsory component? What's going to be the effect of that in your view?
Well, I think that Stephen Kennedy, the Treasury Secretary, made it pretty clear this week at estimates that every time that there is an increase in the superannuation guarantee, it does have a trade-off effect with wages and with jobs. There are labour costs are reasonably fixed, and if an employer has to pay more to their employees through higher superannuation guarantee, well, they're less likely to pay more in wage rises, or potentially less likely to put on new employees. But that said, that was a commitment that the Morrison government made 6 years ago to raise the superannuation guarantee, and it's a commitment that we've followed through with. So the super guarantee will rise to 10% on the 1st of July.
And so you've got this women's economic security portfolio, and the Prime Minister spoke about this women's cabinet meeting regularly. How often have you met that body of ministers?
Well, the full body of ministers has met a couple of times, but we also have sort of subcommittees within there. We meet informally and speak about initiatives all the time. Obviously, in the lead up to the budget, it was really important to get those measures through, whether it be on women's safety, economic security, women's health as well, and also leadership and development programs, which came under economic security.
And finally, having worked in the corporate sector, do you think the parliament's as toxic a workplace as people make out?
Actually, I know that this is a very personal experience and everybody's experience is different. But I worked in financial services, which, hey, that has one of the highest gender pay gaps in the country. It's a very robust industry. I think it's improved dramatically in the last few years, but I certainly found financial services a far more masculine, if you like, workplace than Parliament House and than politics. I actually think that it's a really encouraging environment where there is a great camaraderie between colleagues, male and female. I certainly find the support of my female colleagues to be, really important and also inspirational. And I also think there's a great female network around parliamentary staff as well. The important thing, I think, though, is that we all look out for each other and realise that everybody's experience is different, and that we are, I suppose, everybody has each other's best interests at heart and looks out for each other.
Jane Hume, thanks for your time.
Great to be with you, Andrew.